Tonight we've got a remarkable show planned for you, and I'll tell you, it's going to open your eyes to a lot of things, and it's going to be probably a show that when you apply critical thinking to everything that's been going on in the skies above us with the weather changes and everything else, you begin to see a pattern emerge. And sometimes it takes patience to be vindicated when you are in the business of revealing agendas for the longest time that are, well, they've been called secret or clandestine or black op or whatever, but there are plenty of agendas that remain in the shadows, and when the light illuminates the dark corners of reality, we can all have our small victories. We call them small victories. And there have been a few people, just a few, not a lot, but just a few, that, well, if it's reported as something in the margin, you know, what I talk about, you go outside the margins and you find these stories, you grab them, you bring them here. That's what the show's about, okay? The show is about taking stories that are in the margins, then bringing them to the mainstream as best we can, do it before the mainstream narrative does, and hopefully by the time they decide to spin it and make it into some homogenized goo that they want to throw on you and hope it sticks, that we here have already discussed it. And we've discussed it to a point where we have the idea and we know about it first. And so, but if I do bring up these stories, contrary to what a lot of people who want to call up and tell me, I'm not here to instill hysteria. It's not the point. It's not the point of this program is to instill hysteria. If I say, look, something's happening, I don't want you to go in the streets and panic and scream doom, 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 doom. There are a lot of people out there that just love to tell me there ain't no Santa Claus, there ain't no tooth fairy, and I just look at them and I laugh. I'm like, what, you think that I'm just some crackpot conspiracy theorist? Because, you know, that's the thing. It's a pejorative now. And with Alex Jones, what he did last night on CNN, it's even more of a pejorative. And regardless of what you might say, I know that we talked about him last night. Regardless, I mean, there are a lot of people now that are thinking that, hey, these guys are poster children for the loony bin. And it's always been that way because we talk about stories that they don't. We go back to the story of the guy who hacked in to the Johnson Space Center and the Pentagon, Gary McKinnon, who they didn't extradite him to the United States. And the charges that he hacked into a secret NASA and Pentagon mainframe had been dropped. McKinnon was arrested on March 2002 for allegedly hacking into dozens of NASA and Pentagon computers. He admitted to security breaches and said, hey, but I found some interesting stuff I want to share with all of you. One, I saw a big UFO over the northern hemisphere. Don't know what it was. I found a list of officers' names under the heading non-terrestrial officers. McKinnon stated that what he found was fleet-to-fleet transfers, and there was no listing of any of these ships in the Navy rosters.
I was in search of suppressed technology, laughingly referred to as UFO technology. I think it's the biggest kept secret in the world because of its comic value. But it's a very important thing. We've got old age pensioners can't pay their fuel bills. We've got countries being invaded to get award oil contracts to the West. And meanwhile, secretive parts of the secret government are sitting on suppressed technology for free energy.
So how did you go about trying to find the stuff that you were looking for in NASA, in the Department of Defense?
Well, I assumed that although it's part of a secret government project, there must be military ties. I'd read 400 expert witness testimonies, ranging from civilian air traffic controllers through military radar operators, all the way up to guys that were in charge of whether or not to launch nuclear missiles. So it's a very credible people.
So all this was happening, and here's another thing, too. He also said that there were records that he found that there were off-planet shuttles that could hold 300 people. Okay? Not these little puny X-37Bs, but 300-seaters that can get 300 people up into space in a quick amount of time. So after all this, there was talk about a program that many Americans are unaware of, but it's a secret program. It's been around since the time of Ronald Reagan called Solar Warden. Now, it is speculated this program has been around, as I said, since the time of Ronald Reagan, that if you look into Freedom of Information Act and all this other stuff that you can use to get details on the program. It'll give you a few details, but it has most of the program records redacted and that it was an operation based out of the Johnson Space Center, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the program not only operates classified under the U.S. government, but also under the United Nations Authority. The United Nations also has its talons in the whole global warming scam, and their green movement has always been a militaristic front for global sustainability and how the elite can survive an extinction-level threat, mainly environmental. But what if it's spatial? What if it's something from what if it's extraterrestrial? Well, Solar Warden is said to be made up from U.S. aerospace black projects contractors, but with some contributions of parts and systems by Canada, United Kingdom, Italy, Australia, Russia, and Austria, Russia, Australia. It's also a program that they've tested and operated, and some of the bases where they've done this, and I had an idea, and I didn't know, but I had an idea. Out in the western of Utah, they have these training facilities where they test this stuff and set up platforms, allegedly. In fact, Bill Burns of UFO Magazine said that when he was in Nevada and Utah, they saw these things flying overhead. They were actually shown. But a breakthrough investigation provided by Ground Zero producer Olav Phillips in San Francisco and Rob Daven of Conspiracy HQ in Canada is now revealing that a series of UFO sightings in the United States may very well be part of this Solar Warden program. Now, what's interesting about this article, and I don't know if the gentlemen are aware of this report, but right before Christmas, there was a report in California about a guy who was just scanning the skies with his telescope. And give a listen to this report.
A Sacramento man scanning the night sky catches a sudden burst of light through his telescope, and he recorded that strange sight with his smartphone.
Cody Stark shared the video with experts to see if they could solve the mystery.
So the other day, I get this message on Facebook. I have something on video no one's ever seen. I had my telescope out, caught an explosion in outer space. Want to see the video? Would I?
Here is the video. Now, it's shot on an iPhone looking through the eyepiece of a telescope, so it's kind of hard to see, so we blew it up.
I don't know if you can see that, but there's something orbiting that planet over there.
Elijah shot the video on December 20th around 5:05 p.m. in Sacramento.
I saw something that I'd never seen before. I saw another object orbiting this, whatever it was up there. And I've never seen anything like that before.
He thought it was a little strange, so he put his phone down, called his nephew, picked up the phone, and shot this second video.
Oh my God, it blew up. What the? Something just blew.
Once again, it's his camera phone shot through a telescope lens, so we zoomed in and we slowed it down.
What this guy saw is he saw this sphere in the middle of the sky as he was panning with his telescope. And the sphere had another sphere that was going around it, like it was orbiting around it. It was just going round and round and round. And all of a sudden, the sphere explodes into a lot of pieces. And when they called a number of astrophysicists and weathermen and all this, none of them said that they knew what it was. And they could not comment on what it was. So there have been another number of other sightings, too, where some strange platforms have been seen, and all this has been going on. But I could talk about this myself, but I would love to bring onto the program Rob Daven from Conspiracy HQ and Olav Phillips, who is one of the chief producers of Ground Zero. Welcome, gentlemen, to Ground Zero.
Thanks, Clyde.
You bet. Olav, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic. But as I was looking through my files and looking through notes, I couldn't help but notice that NASA is damn involved with every weather report I hear, and it's because of the fact that they're spending, well, they have spent nearly, well, over 1.5, in most cases $1.9 billion in some sort of program where they are monitoring from space the weather situation and the geophysical situation. Since when has NASA become these experts on climate and geoengineering? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, Clyde, it's actually interesting. You were talking about that report from Sacramento, and there is some late-breaking news on that, and it ties into NASA. On a local news station, they played that report, and apparently NASA and the NOAA claimed that it was a weather balloon that exploded.
Oh, of course. Well, I've seen that. Well, of course they'll say it's a weather balloon, and at night you see a bright flash of weather balloon explosion.
Right.
I mean, that thing looked like a huge sphere, looked like a planet. So I don't know if weather balloons are bright at night, like one of those Chinese lanterns, but of course they'll say it's a weather balloon. They have nothing else to say.
I think, we'll get into some more detail about this, but I think that $1.9 billion that you're looking for, along with hundreds of billions of others, are trapped inside of special access programs. And, NASA is well known for having a number of militarized programs.
Right. Well, this even, I think this adds fuel to the fire to the idea that a lot of these climate science program monies are going for more than just looking at the planet's climate science. I think it's going into militarized projects of weaponizing and possibly weather modification from way up. And I'm sure that we're going to get more into this as we discuss your late-breaking article that's right now on Conspiracy HQ, and it's making the rounds. It's going viral on the internet right now, discussing Solar Warden and several other possible, I guess you could say, programs that NASA's been involved with that the public is not aware of. So this article that you've just published, I read it today. It's fascinating about all of these sightings that have happened, these unconventional-looking UFOs, and it reminds me of a UFO that I had posted, a UFO video I posted on Facebook, and some guy asked the question, why do UFOs need collision lights? And that's a very good question. Maybe it's because those UFOs are ours. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I would say definitely. I mean, they're, that 1.9 billion and hundreds of billions of others are going somewhere. And it stands to reason, especially with what McKinnon found and what we've seen more recently. With the information about Solar Warden, it makes sense that a lot of these UFOs are indeed human-derived. And there is a very long-running path of research down the whole Nazi UFO thing, too. So, yeah, I'd say that a percentage are probably alien, but quite a few of them, I think now that we're getting further in the research, are human.
Rob, when you were doing the research, what was some of the most interesting stuff you came upon? Because I'm thinking, I went into some speculating with all that money, and Olav, of course, is kind of backing me up on this. All this money funneled into military-industrial complex projects that are black ops. And when you see what Ben Rich had to say from Skunkworks, he said that he believes that a lot of this stuff, we're like 300 years beyond what the American people really understand. This could mean that we do have these space shuttles with 300 people, or they can house or seat 300 people. What would you say to that, Rob?
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind. I mean, what Gary McKinnon brought out, it just blew it out of the water. But, I mean, really, Clyde, how does a toilet seat cost $150,000, right? Like, they've been funneling money for years into this.
Right, and you know what's really, and Rob, you know what's really interesting about this whole story of McKinnon is that not Jeffrey Holder, but Secretary Holder and Hillary, both Clinton, had to be the ones that had to talk about this. It was so important, the McKinnon story. It was addressed by the Prime Minister of England and also Barack Obama at a news conference. And while they didn't address what McKinnon had uncovered, they talked about hacking securities and all that. But what's important that we know is that McKinnon did uncover some off-Earth battalion fleets, off-Earth or leaving Earth types of plans, and a huge UFO that was cylindrical in shape, or a platform that was seen in the Northern Hemisphere. Is that right, Rob?
Yep, yeah, and I believe he said he saw an overhead shot of a craft that was, probably a couple miles in diameter. And then I've read a lot about McKinnon and checked into him, seen quite a few of his interviews and whatnot, and he doesn't strike me as the type of guy to just make that up to try to get himself off the hook.
The government had to acknowledge that he did hack into the UFO files. And that's the thing about this case, is no one really attempts, except for you guys, because you just put this article out, no one really attempts to get into the mainstream and have this guy on TV to talk about what he's found, because he literally is the smoking gun for disclosure, because he hacked into these secret sites, was going to be jailed 60 years in prison for this, and to basically, I guess, escape the embarrassment, the United States government had dropped all charges against him.
Well, there was a guy at the Huffington Post who did an article about it because he was so shocked. He thought it was crazy, and he filed a FOIA request against I forget who he sent it to. I think the DOD to get information about Solar Warden, this thing that McKinnon had found. The response he got back for his FOIA request was, yes, Solar Warden exists. It was a program that was started under Reagan. It was canceled. But who sent you to us, NASA? And that was the end of the email. I mean, it does exist. This we're not crazy.
No, it does exist, and that's why I think it's important that we we talk about this. And probably, as I said before, it's always nice to have a breakthrough article and a breakthrough announcement that, after the dust had settled and McKinnon was safe in his home and his parents were happy, or his mother was happy, he wasn't going to face prison time. The fact that he had Asperger's, and that's what they decided is, well, he went in and he did this because, he has Asperger's and he didn't know what kind of damage he'd cause. He really didn't cause any damage. In fact, he admits, I didn't cause any damage at all. All I did is I found this information, and I think the government, the U.S. government, was embarrassed by the fact that their security at the time, and he was only using, a 52, he was using a really slow hookup, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a 56K modem, and the computers he was apparently breaking into didn't even have passwords on them.
Right, no passwords, nothing. So they got into the files, found these secret platforms that are flying over the Earth, monitoring the Earth. And then, of course, last time I think we had Olav on to talk about the X-37B and the fact that the space plane's flying around. It keeps having these missions that fly around, and they say that they're using it to monitor weather, and they're using it to monitor. I wonder if this is all about weather control, geoengineering that they're doing, and space war, that it's all about using the Earth as a weapon, using space as a weapon, and, of course, we know about all the failed programs we've talked about before, or the programs that may still be up there, like Project Thor, the rods from God, dropping these tungsten rods on cities that has the same kiloton value as an atomic bomb. I mean, these are all space programs that are perfectly legal without having the nuclear weapons up there, but having Space Patrol up there looking around with Solar Warden, well, that's another thing entirely. Tonight on the show, Olav Phillips and Rob Daven. Doing good. You're on with Rob Daven and Olav Phillips. Go ahead.
Well, I was on a Project Warden down in Texas for LTV, which is Ling, Timco, and Vaught.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm well past my 60s now, but I worked on what they called Project Space Warden. And that was the first thing of Mr. Reagan's Star Wars.
So you worked on Space Warden? It wasn't Solar Warden, it was Space Warden?
That's what they called it. They called it Space Warden then. But I worked in the hangar. Then they called it the Black Hole because nothing came out. A lot of stuff went in and nothing came out. Well, I worked on a great big horizontal boring mill that I was up 50 feet, and I could see over these walls that they had built. And they were building things there and it sure wasn't the B-1B or the B-2 that we were building in the other building. And it was all done by federal marshals. That's who the guards were. It wasn't a private security outfit. And, of course, I had to sign the 10-year Secrecy Act, and I was on that for almost 20 years. But it was Project Space Warden. That was in 1974.
Project Space Warden, 1974. Ray, guys, look, you got an exclusive right here. Ray worked on Space Warden in 1974. That probably evolved into Solar Warden. He said he eventually worked on it for the Reagan administration. You have any questions for Ray?
I do. The objects that you're talking about, the PT boat with the 8 1-megaton football-sized projectiles, you said it was going along the equator. I take it it's in orbit?
Yep. There was 3 platforms built.
Okay.
They were put up there, and the fun that I know of, they're still there. They're non-detectable.
Interesting. Do you know of anything? Do you know of anything else that was put up there?
Not really. The stuff that they were building. The way they done this stuff was they built parts of it in different places, so that no one knew what exactly they were building. And that was the way they handled the secrecy part of it. But the objects that they were building, they were black, they were carbon fiber, and I worked on the B-1B and the B-2, and we were building the B-2 on the B-1B program long before the B-1B was even approved. And that's the way they did this stuff. They've done it on time and materials, and there were some of those platforms that they built that There's no way that it went into a B-1B or a B-2. I've seen the prints for those aircraft. I'm a master machinist, and now I'm an engineer. So, back all these years, I'm thinking, well, there's no way that fits in a B-1B or a B-2 or even the stealth fighter. They were smaller. They would fit inside the Challenger or one of the other shuttles and fit in there easily. It folds. It just folds up.
And they were unmanned?
They were unmanned.
The stuff you saw on the other side of the wall, you said...
Yeah, they had some 12-foot walls built in that place, but the top was open. But I'd go up 50 feet up there because that's where I worked the machine. It was a horizontal boring mill. And I was doing all this special materials. The fact is, I was using diamond tools. It was some materials that I'd never seen before. But that's why I'm working for the company I am now, because I'm familiar with diamond tools.
Ray, I want to thank you for talking to us tonight about Space Warden. I think this is a remarkable exclusive. You're the man. I thank you for calling this program. You are a pure treasure for what we were talking about tonight, just to give a little credibility to what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's very unusual because the stuff came in there and no one ever saw it leave. It all went out inadvertently. I know some of it went to New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it went to a place in Los Angeles, and another place went up into Kansas. And
wow, that just comes together with everything we talked about. Ray, thank you so much. We're out of time. Thank you so much for calling in.
You betcha.
Have a good night. Take care. We'll be back with more. Fascinating show. Rob Daven's with us, Olav Phillips, and this exclusive from Ray tonight. What a remarkable program. We'll be back. Keep it here on Ground Zero.